Now, similarly, a new report from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) has ranked Nigeria as the sixth top contributor to global real GDP growth for 2026, with a projected share of 1.5%. This places Nigeria ahead of economic powerhouses like Germany and Brazil, signaling a remarkable shift in the global economic landscape, where emerging markets, including ours, are taking the lead, with China and India dominating the top spots and the Asia-Pacific region driving nearly half of worldwide growth. It's clear that the balance of power is indeed changing. Now, to help us make sense of the implication for Nigeria, both the opportunities it signals and the hard work still ahead, we are joined in the studio by Mr. Chris Kaka, an economist as well as a National Program Coordinator, Trade Network Initiative. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you for having me.
Now to begin to begin the conversation, you know, when I first saw the report, I was just like, how? We are the fourth in Africa. So how comes we happen to be among the top 10 contributing to the world's real GDP?
Okay, thank you very much. I think one thing is to first say that the projections that have been made by the IMF is one that is also in line with what the World Bank has said, and it's also in line with what the Bretton Woods had also said. So these three different organizations that are having a global view of issues have also made the similar predictions about Nigeria. One is to understand that it's just a mere predictions, and the predictions are actually having a basis upon which they are made. A major of which is actually the series of reforms that are actually going on in Nigeria. So it is like simulating, if you continue in this particular trajectory, this is where we think you are going to be in the particular, in this particular year. And it's important to situate that is what the World Bank has actually, the IMF has actually done in terms of projecting our growth. And that's exactly what it is. In other words, it could fall at the end of the year this way, it could be the other way as well, but this is what the World Bank thinks. If we maintain the trajectory, the kind of reforms that are already going on and what we've done so far, we may be able to achieve that particular growth of contributing 1.5 and a GDP for Nigeria of about 4.4% by the end of 2026.
You know, just last week, the WTO DG was saying that Nigeria is not even among the top 10 fastest growing countries in Africa. Then does it mean that is a sign that things are actually getting better due to these reforms that we are actually embarking on?
I think let's clear that conflict of information that are actually coming from both other ends of it. It is that the IMF, yes, maybe realities on ground might not be reflecting this, but the analysis of the IMF, the projections of IMF are based on the assessment of country. Yearly, the IMF does what we call Article 4 consultation. So the IMF team every year, every member country of the IMF, they do an assessment of your fiscal, monetary, and otherwise policy of the country and give appropriate recommendations to it. Again, every 5 years, there is a mandatory financial sector assessment that is done by the International Monetary Fund. And it's against these two platforms that the IMF actually does its projection and tell you, this is based on what we have found as the board of directors of the IMF will tell you, this is where we think you're actually going as far as this particular projection is concerned. For Nigeria, I think the projections, if you understand the basis upon which it's done, is actually out of place. It might sound like something we should be excited about, but the common man on the street will feel, excuse me, the reality on ground does not speak to what you're saying. But these are macroeconomics that are based upon which the analyses are made, and one can actually rule them out if they are scientifically based, and that's exactly what we have at the moment with them.
Now, so what, in your own analysis, what key factors do you think have positioned Nigeria in this top 10?
Okay, let me agree that yes, the reality on ground does not show, but then you need to understand this. A lot of reforms have been recommended for Nigeria to carry out, and that reforms have actually been carried out. The fiscal reforms, the tax reforms that are actually going on, it's one that will actually help Nigeria to reduce debt financing by mobilizing money outside the country to actually looking inwards, because we believe that the tax revenue that Nigeria will generate from the new tax, the administration of the new tax act, will be able to actually promote national development and reduce our reliance on external borrowing, which is what the government wants to do. Again, you have seen there have been recapitalization of some financial institutions. Our financial sector seems that's stable enough to actually carry the weight of any form of investment you want to do at the moment, and that is good for investors who want to come into the country. You have seen that there is actually the liquidity of Forex now. Today now, you just read that it's dropped down to about, Naira has actually appreciated. Before it used to be almost going to 2,000 Naira to a dollar. Right at the moment, we're having about 1,300, thereabout. These are indicators that is actually informing. Again, because we have liberalized our foreign exchange market, there is a willing buyer, willing seller, as investors are willing to come in, unlike before where the government had to actually peg the foreign exchange. These are a couple of the reforms that have actually informed what the IMF has actually predicted for Nigeria. Again, you need to realize that the central bank before now used to give federal government overdraft. Recently, the central bank governor said it was not going to happen anymore. This deficit monetization, where we use means and ways, ways and means of the central bank options to begin to finance government expenditure, is not going to work anymore. So there are reforms going on, but I don't think, because there are macroeconomics reforms going on, it will take a time before they begin to reflect at the micro level for every one of us to begin to see. But I can tell you that we're actually on course, if you ask me, in terms of achieving the projected contribution to global GDP.
Now, China and India are somehow dominating the list, together accounting for over 43% of global growth. What are they actually doing right that we can learn from them?
Oh, I think these two countries are very high-tech countries. Nigeria has actually not come today. If you look at the trade relations between Nigeria, in fact, China and Nigeria, surprisingly enough, again, are part of the top 5 countries that Nigerians have got some strong trading relationship with. India, for instance, I know import our oil, and they bring into us pharmaceutical. Most of the pharmaceutical products we have in Nigeria and equipment are actually from India. If you check that of China, China is part of those who's actually financing development in Nigeria. It's either they are doing build, operate, and transfer for you, or they actually give Nigeria that particular loan to finance development. A lot of infrastructure going on, manufacturing, particularly in the area of energy. China is actually dominating it in Nigeria here. And so one can begin to see why these two economies are projected to be the one dominating the global market at the moment. And I think those are lessons for Nigeria to learn, and actually see how they can learn, pick a couple of cues from this country and see how we can actually model our countries on that part of growth that they've also achieved themselves.
Okay, the International Monetary Fund said Nigeria is likely to become the 3rd largest economy in Africa. By that means this year, 2026. By that, when that happens, how much do we need to do to actually get to achieve the $1 trillion economy?
Well, you see, there's something about, I think we need to do a lot. We need to maintain the trajectory of the reforms actually going on, which is one that's also recommended by the IMF itself. Some have also said these IMF conditionalities and whatever, at the end of the day, you implement them, you don't see the dividend of it. I remember that in the days of one of our former leader, President Babangida, who took the structural adjustment program, tightened everywhere, just because the IMF have actually directed that. And at the end of the people said, where is the dividend of it? I think one thing needs to be made clear. When these people tell you to actually do those things, yeah, there are people who, school of thoughts, who might not buy what they say, but I think there are dividends to it. They are helping you to block leakages of, the fiscal rascality that goes on, they actually want to deal with it. We are not saying we will not have our challenges, but I think if we continue on this path of implementation of this, it will surprise you to know that government was actually violating certain central bank rules, because they were using ways and means to take more than 5% of the previous year revenue, which is what is recommended, to actually finance their budget, apart from borrowing money outside. These are a couple of things that they are trying to actually block for us. And I'm sure if we actually continue in this place, we'll build a strong reserve. If we continue to see how we can invest, diversify our economy, as it were, which is one of the criteria, that the IMF uses in assessing development in the country, I'm sure we'll actually be there and we'll be able to achieve that 1 trillion mark. Need not say again that yes, it might be a tall order. I think it was even after the rebasing of our economy, when we then choose to use 2019 as against 2010 as the base year, our GDP had actually not reached what Algeria had, and I'm told from what we have now from the IMF, we might become the third. We might be replacing Algeria in that direction. I think if we continue on the path of the reforms, and that means that everybody, both the media, the civil society, need to continue to begin to observe and actually oversight what government is actually doing to ensure that the dividends of these particular reforms actually trickles down to every Nigerian. And that's when we can say we've actually achieved what the World Bank was actually intending for us to actually achieve in the first place.
The federal government is actually targeting 7% growth.
Yeah.
How achievable is that?
I think it's achievable. Yes, we might still have high inflation. If you see what is actually going on at the moment, I tell you the truth. After we rebased our economy, it then became clear to us. Some say, why did you rebase it? It was just to create an artificial growth for Nigeria. But the truth is, there were sectors within the economy that were actually not captured in terms of their contribution to the GDP. And that's why they actually had to use a different base here. We are most likely to achieve that 7% growth if we actually keep it on the path. Then again, is that we may be challenged with issues of insecurity at the moment. We may also be challenged, even with the IMF predictions, by the fact that there will be volatility in the international oil price. These are some of the issues that we actually need to deal with if we must be able to achieve it. But I think it's achievable for us. I don't like a country that it's important you put your target very high so that when you may not achieve it at the end of the day, but you would have successfully used that as a pointer to guide your movements, guide your actions, and at the end of the day, you would have been able to, make some progress towards achieving it, rather than having it at a level where it's easy for you to achieve, and at the end of the day, you begin to say it's uhuru. We actually achieved it when you've done nothing in the first
now,
place.
Mr. Kaka, before I let you go,
Yeah.
We've always been, we've been a country that we things when we get to record things like, a particular growth we tend to celebrate, and, but when you look at the real impact, when you come down to the grassroots, you hardly feel the, at what point do we get to record a kind of growth that the common man will feel that, okay, this is actually impacting on him? At what rate of growth do we get to feel that impact?
I wouldn't be able to give you an exact figure because these figures you see pushed out are subject of a lot of econometrics analysis. But then I can confidently tell you one thing, that even the IMF, when it made its own prediction, also cited certain caveats, that it's important government continue to do this conditional cash transfer to the vulnerable groups. You and I were discussing before now that, look, these things are being done, but we don't know how well they actually begin to affect the ordinary Nigerian. I feel in my mind that, yes, these are macroeconomic indicators that are given to us. The microeconomic analysis need to begin to reflect the truth of it. We need to deal with issues of inflations very seriously. I must tell you that fact. That's one of the major things. There must be some form of regulations in this country where, property owners don't just wake up one morning and begin to tell you. You need to begin to address issues affecting the ordinary common man in terms of food, shelter, those basic needs. If government can come up with some form of regulations that, somebody could wake up any morning and tell you my property now goes for 10 times the price you paid last year. Nobody says anything about it. So it's important we come into place and see how we can address it. Government is doing its best as much as it can, but I think governance at the subnational level, state and local governments needs to also come into play here and put in some form of reforms that will actually help to regulate this particular things that affect the ordinary Nigerian. Because all of it, in all sincerity, does not rest on the shoulder of the federal government to deal with for us.
Thank you very much, Chris Kaka, for sharing your thought with us.
My pleasure being here.